Hi, my name is Leesha, and today I'm going to be talking to you about continual support systems, which is an approach for engaging ad hoc crowds in community support. So people in communities often are interested in helping others in their community, but also try and balance that with achieving their own goals that they might have. So for example, a graduate student might be willing to help a peer with a study design in between their own research progress. In another setting, a spectator at a race might want to cheer for other runners while they wait for their own runner to race past. These existing community resources and people in these communities are really well equipped to help with the needs that might emerge in that community because they're generally willing, able, and available to support the needs of others. They might be willing because they value the types of needs that might arise within that community. They're able because they might have the knowledge or skills or expertise to provide the help. And they're available because they might have these periods of time between their own goals where they have capacity to provide support. So for example, a graduate student might be willing because they value early feedback when working on a study design. They might be able because they've worked on study designs in the past and can offer that expertise. And they might be available because they have moments between their own research work where they can provide that help. Similarly, a spectator at a race might be willing to offer support because they value they value the meaning of hearing a cheer when running in a race. They might be able because they know what that type of impactful cheering could look like and therefore could provide it to other runners. And they are available because they might have these moments between waiting for their own runner where they could be cheering for other runners. The challenge, though, in these settings is that the moments where needs might arise and the moments where an individual's goals demand attention are changing continuously, and they can occur at the same time. This can make it really challenging for a potential helper to track moments where needs arise and goals demand attention, to be able to decide when they actually have the capacity to support needs given their own goals, and to prepare to support needs on demand between their own goals. So for example, a graduate student may be generally willing and have the domain expertise to help a peer with their study design, but in the moment, they may struggle to recognize that they don't have the capacity to help that week because they actually have their own upcoming conference deadline. As another example, the spectator at the race may be generally willing and available to cheer for other runners at the race, but they might hesitate to do so if they're focused on finding their own runner in the crowd, or they may be unprepared to cheer on the fly for someone they don't know. And so for the rest of the talk, I'd like to talk about how there's a need in existing research for a continual support approach. And I'll go ahead and present and describe what that approach is. And then after that, I'll talk about how we instantiate this approach through a system called crowd cheer, which is a continual support system that's designed to engage an ad hoc crowd of spectators who are trying to cheer for runners at races. And then we'll present results from our pilot study that was at a 10K race, demonstrating how spectators were able to cheer for both other runners and their own runners. So CSCW research has long been interested in better connecting people's needs to existing resources in their community. For example, there are expertise recommendation systems that help identify experts for a specific need, and there are systems like peer research that match helpers to needs in a community algorithmically. However, this prior work does not model how a person's needs may change over time, or how the changing status of a potential helper's own goals might affect their availability to help in the moment. When people's needs continually change, relying on individuals to regularly report their needs might lead to incomplete data. So for example, the needs that are reported might be primarily reported by people who are really skilled at seeking help, rather than needs that are representative of the needs across the entire community. And when a person's availability to help is dependent on the changing status of their own goals, general models of availability and scheduled help sessions can actually be unreliable predictors for who is actually available to help in that moment. So without modeling continuously changing status of people's needs or goals, existing systems can't know or support people in knowing when someone actually has the capacity to support a need, or when they should focus on their own goals. Real-time crowdsourcing research has also explored techniques for supporting real-time needs with paid on-demand crowd workers. Prior approaches suggest models to retain crowds in waiting lobbies where they can complete tasks and are readily available to support other needs that might arise on demand. However, in our setting, potential helpers may only be conditionally available because as volunteers, they may wish to focus on their own goals at certain times and help address the needs of others at other moments. We can't assume that volunteers will be generally available to support needs on demand. And so we need approaches that model the conditional availability of these volunteer crowds based on their ongoing goals that can evaluate and approaches that can evaluate opportune moments for them to support community needs that might arise. Recent work has also explored approaches for engaging volunteer community members to support local community needs by providing opportunities for helping others in ways that are cognizant of a helper's routines. So for example, there's been a lot of existing work in on-the-go crowdsourcing space which helps think about how someone might contribute to a community goal like delivering a package for another person en route to a destination like on their way to work. Unlike our work, though, such on-the-go crowdsourcing systems primarily focus on tasking design that is non-disruptive toward the goals of individuals. So, for example, they might identify convenient moments in which a person can help. And as a result, they're generally less focused on directly supporting the goals of helpers. Thus, we may also need approaches that can consider how to prepare individuals with the context and cues they need to switch between supporting community needs and then refocusing on their own goals with ease, as a way to sort of directly support those individuals in completing their own goals. In terms of the practical setting, there have been several recent approaches to the practical problem of soliciting more support for runners at races, such as systems for crowdsourcing remote support or custom race applications designed to engage spectators at the race. However, these systems aren't really designed to support spectators in balancing cheering for their own runners and meaningfully supporting other runners at a race. Studies have shown that runners find remote support less impactful than directed cheers. And while spectators could use existing apps to track other runners, we have observed that they still face challenges in identifying these opportune moments and preparing to support other runners while they are also cheering for their own runner. Now, while there's a wide variety of approaches to assist spectators in supporting other runners at races, just kidding. Okay, moving on. So we use the practical setting of spectators cheering for their runner and other runners at races to conceptualize the challenges in engaging these individuals in continual support and describe how a continual support framework can support these individuals in balancing their own goals with supporting the needs of others. And so we asked ourselves, what are these challenges to engaging potential helpers like spectators at a race in continual support? And from our need finding in the setting, we found that potential helpers struggled to maintain awareness of moments where needs arise and goals demand attention, decide when they have the capacity to support others' needs given their own goals, and really be prepared to support others' needs on demand when they are also trying to focus on their own goals in other moments. So to get into the first challenge, while these potential helpers might be willing to support the needs of the community, it can be really difficult for them to maintain awareness of these moments where goals require attention and needs arise. So for example, in the race setting, a spectator who's primarily tracking and cheering for their own runner at a race may be willing to also cheer on other runners who need support because they've seen the impact of cheering for their own runners at past races. However, as runners make continued progress, a spectator may have limited ways to track specific moments to cheer for other nearby runners while also tracking their own runner. And while the potential helpers are generally available to support community needs, it can be really hard for them to evaluate and decide when they actually have the capacity to support needs given their own goals. So for example, a spectator at a race may be generally available to cheer for other runners. But in practice, it's possible that the moments where their own runner is approaching are coinciding with an emerging opportunity to cheer for a nearby runner. And as a result, it can be really challenging for spectators to evaluate in the moment whether or not they have the capacity to support another runner. And finally, while these potential helpers are generally well equipped and able, because they have the skills and expertise to offer meaningful help, potential helpers can still struggle to provide this impactful support on demand between the moments where their own goals demand their attention, when the strategies that they use often require prior planning and coordination. So for example, the strategies that we observed spectators use would often require coordinating in advance with their runners to get things like pace charts for estimating when a runner might arrive at a specific course location based on a runner's pace, or knowing in advance what outfit that runner was going to wear on race day so they could easily spot them in the crowd. And so to overcome these challenges, we think about this continual support approach and framework. Continual support connects potential helpers to opportune moments to support others' needs between their own goals. The continual support approach enables potential helpers to maintain awareness of the moments where needs arise and goals demand attention by monitoring the status of individual goals and emerging needs. It helps potential helpers evaluate and decide when they have the capacity to support others' needs given their own goals by matching those individuals to the opportune moments to support others' needs given the state of their goals. And finally, it prepares potential helpers to support others' needs on demand between their own goals by priming them with the context that they need to provide that support on demand. And so we'll next walk through each of these components of the framework. The monitor component of the continual support framework enables a system to really determine when needs arise and goals demand attention by modeling people's needs for help and helpers' own goals within the community. The match component of the framework enables the system to match potential helpers to opportune moments to support others' needs or focus on their own goals by evaluating when potential helpers have the capacity to support an emerging need in the moment. So you could see here that in the blue panels, there are these moments where the potential helper has the capacity to support, to provide support to an emerging community need because their goal does not demand their attention in that moment. And finally, the prime component of the framework gathers detailed context based on the different static and dynamic information provided that they need to be able to provide that on-demand support. And it uses the information to prime and cue individuals once they've committed to a support opportunity. And so by overcoming these types of challenges with a continual support approach, we can enable individuals to balance their own goals with supporting the needs of others, and in doing so, scale the needs that we are capable of meeting with existing community resources. And so while individuals can face these types of challenges in community settings like the workplace, we've been studying these challenges in the context of ad hoc crowds, where individuals may not have explicit social ties, but are engaged in a similar activity and in a shared setting. And so they might still be generally willing, available, and able to support others who face challenges that they may have faced in the past or have supported previously. So for example, while the ad hoc crowd of spectators at a race may not personally know other runners, they're engaged in similar activities and in this shared setting of the race, and therefore are generally willing, available, and able to support others, to support other runners at races in the moments where they are not supporting their own runner. And so to study the use of the continual support approach in engaging these ad hoc crowds of spectators, we introduced CrowdCheer, which is a continual support system in an iOS app that monitors the moments where a runner's needs arise and the spectator's own goal demands attention. It matches spectators to opportune moments to cheer for these other runners and their own runner, and it primes and cues spectators to spot and directly cheer for other runners on demand. CrowdCheer uses a dashboard to continuously present the status of the spectator's primary runner alongside nearby runners who might need support. And CrowdCheer implements Monitor to model the changing status of spectators and their goals, like the status of their runner, and runners, and their emerging needs, like when a runner could use a cheer. CrowdCheer also evaluates a spectator's moment-to-moment capacity to support others' needs, and then uses a side-loading technique to conditionally emphasize these opportune moments to either cheer for other runners or to cheer for their own runner. CrowdCheer implements Match to evaluate for each spectator the moments where needs might arise. So when there's a nearby runner that is not their runner, and the moments where their goals require attention. So when their own runner is approaching. And it computes the moments to support others' needs or focus on their own goals. Once a spectator commits to cheering for either their runner or another runner, CrowdCheer can then log this decision into the system. So once a spectator has committed to cheering for a runner, CrowdCheer provides identifying information, support information, live maps, distance trackers, and visual cues to prepare spectators to successfully cheer on demand once they commit to cheering for either their runner or another runner. So for example, it provides support information like the specific cheer that a runner has requested that the spectator can say. It gives identifying information like the picture, bib number, a description of the outfit so the spectator can identify the runner. It provides a live map and distance tracker so the spectator has a dynamic sense of where the runner is and how close they are. And it provides explicit visual cues that tell a spectator when to look up and start cheering for the runner as they move past. CrowdCheer implements Prime by using the context primer that retrieves the necessary static context about the runner and the dynamic information about their changing status modeled in Monitor in order to provide these priming interactions. And we'll go ahead and just watch this quick demo of CrowdCheer. So you see the spectator cheering for James.
Yeah, come on, James, come on, do it for the beer.
And then you see the spectator sees their primary runner, Alex, approaching.
Go, Alex, go, you're almost there.
And so we conducted a pilot study to evaluate this CrowdCheer system. And in the pilot study, we hypothesized that using a continual support system like CrowdCheer would enable potential helpers to maintain awareness of these moments where their own goals require attention and needs arise in the community, to make effective decisions about when to focus on goals or support the needs of others in the moment, and to be prepared to support others' needs or return their focus to their own goals on demand. And so we conducted our pilot study at a 10K race in a large metropolitan city and had 16 participants, 5 spectators and 11 runners. The base compensation for all participants, spectators and runners, was $30 for setting up the app, doing the post surveys, and then conducting interviews with us. And runners received an extra $10 for every spectator they recruited to cheer for them, up to 5. Spectators were also told explicitly that cheering for others would not affect their compensation and that they could use the app however they wanted to. at the race. And so in terms of data collection, we had 15-minute post surveys with 14 of the different users. And in the post surveys for spectators in particular, we asked them to do this recollection task where they were given runner profiles, and within, I believe it was 48 hours of the race, they were asked to go through these runner profiles and confirm whether or not that they remembered cheering for that runner. They also answered Likert scale and open-ended questions to recount specific interaction details in these recollection tasks. After the post-surveys, participants did 20 to 30-minute semi-structured interviews, and we did that with a subset of the participants, all spectators and just 3 of the runners. And in the interviews, we assessed the overall experience, and we really tried to get a sense of how they maintained awareness of goals and opportunities, how they identified those opportune moments to cheer, and how crowd cheer prepared them to cheer on demand. And so overall, we found that 80% or 4 of the 5 spectators were able to cheer for other runners, and all spectators were able to cheer for their own runner. We also saw that 63.4% of the runners were actually cheered by other spectators. And that in terms of the spectators, they were actually able to cheer for 2.4 other runners on average beyond their own runner. Qualitatively, we found that individuals were able to balance supporting others' needs with focusing on their own goal with ease. So, for example, spectator D said it wasn't extra work to cheer for other runners. It was like, bam, it felt like a scoreboard with a starting player. When we asked spectators in the survey if they felt that the app was disrupting them with opportunities, or if they believed that the app was not disruptive with opportunities when they were cheering for their own runner, the average response was a 6.8 out of 7 of strongly agree. And spectator A said, I clicked on one of the other names just to see how it worked, and the app was like, oh, okay, my runner is less than a mile away from you. Do you still want to continue to cheer for this person? And I was like, and then she grinned, oh, that's pretty cool. I love the fact that it kept giving you these, okay, your person is coming close. Do you want to keep cheering, or... these findings demonstrate that the individuals found it easy to both support the needs of others while still being able to focus on their own goals while using crowd cheer in a way that was both easy and non-disruptive. So these findings suggest that by helping individuals balance both supporting others' needs with their own goals, continual support systems like crowd cheer can alleviate some of the friction that may have previously prevented these individuals from supporting others in impactful ways. And if we frame support requests in ways that are cognizant of individual goals of these volunteer helpers, continual support systems can engage individuals like those in the ad hoc crowd to support more of the emerging needs of others with little cost to the individuals who are volunteering their support. And so in terms of our first hypothesis, we found that individuals were able to maintain awareness of the status of their own goal and these opportunities to support others' needs. And so when we asked spectators if they knew where their runner was at all times during the race, they responded on average with a 6.2 of 7 on a Likert scale. And as evidenced by the fact that 4 of the 5 spectators cheered for other runners, they were also aware of opportunities to cheer for other runners throughout the race. And in particular, spectators described how the dashboard enabled them to maintain awareness of the changing status of their own goals alongside these emerging needs of other runners. So for example, spectator B said, it was super easy. If I remember correctly, the top half had my runner and where she was, and then the bottom half had all the other runners. So you know roughly how far away they were, and you could tap on them to see more. So it was just super easy to use. These findings suggest that continual support systems can offload the monitoring effort of potential helpers in ways that enable them to maintain awareness of both the changing status of their goals and emerging needs across the community. And in terms of our second hypothesis, we found that individuals were able to evaluate and make decisions about when to support others' needs versus focus on their own goals in effective ways. So when we asked spectators, when I cheered for other runners in the app, I was confident that my runner was far away. Spectators responded with an average of 6.4 of 7 that they agreed. And when we asked spectators qualitatively, how did they know when they could cheer for other runners? Spectator B responded, if I was pulling out my phone to see where they were, I could see, they were like 2 miles, 1.5 miles out or whatever. And so I knew that I didn't have to worry about missing them coming through. And so that gave me the opportunity to see other runners that were nearby and cheer for them. These findings suggest that continual support systems can evaluate for opportune moments to support others and explicitly emphasize them in ways that direct individuals to focus on these support opportunities in the moments that they actually have the capacity to help. And then on the flip side, spectators were also able to know very clearly when to cheer for their own runner. So again, as evidenced by the 4 of the 5 spectators in their survey responses described how sideloading specifically helped them know when to return focus to their own runner as well. Spectator A described her experience with this quote where she said, so when my runner started getting close, I wasn't paying as much attention to other runners. Like if I saw them and there was a couple faces that I recognized or remembered from the screen, because I kept flipping back and forth between those profiles, my runner and someone else's. So I kind of had their face in my head. So, I didn't completely ignore them because I knew they would be finishing around the same time. But I didn't pay as much attention when I saw that my runner was coming up. And in terms of our third hypothesis, we found that individuals were prepared to support other runners' needs on demand between their own goals. So specifically, spectators using CrowdCheer described how the static and dynamic context in the cheering view prepared them to support others' needs on demand. In the Likert scale question, when we asked if they had enough information to spot and cheer for other runners, spectators responded with a 6.7 of 7. Spectators also cited specific static and dynamic information that helped them prepare to cheer for other runners. So they talked about how seeing their photo and that they were nearby helped, and that it was cool to be able to spot a runner based on their description. Spectators also described how seeing the distance he was away from me change colors, and those visual cues were actually really helpful in understanding that their runners were getting closer. And spectators C generally reflected on the accuracy of the app, saying we were in the right place for them to see us. Normally you're just guessing. So kind of in contrast to what they're used to. And so in contrast to our need finding, where gathering context for real-time support required advanced planning or extra monitoring effort from the spectators, these findings suggest that continual support systems can prime and cue these support interactions in ways that actually prepare them to provide support on demand. And then overall, in our findings, we found that individuals really enjoyed and valued supporting others' needs between their own goals. Spectators specifically described how they generally enjoyed and valued using CrowdCheer to cheer for other runners during the race, and responded with a 5.7 of 7 when asked in the Likert scale question. Spectator A reflected and said, "It was exciting. It felt good. It was like they knew someone, even though they didn't know me. But I think it's that they recognized their cheers. So it was good to know that even some strangers had their support, and it felt good to be out there and support." Spectator D reflected similarly, saying, I don't want to miss my runner, but seeing these other runners feeling engaged, it was really cool to have an opportunity to support both my runner and other people. So these findings suggest that by creating an opportunity for individuals to support others' needs while still supporting them and focusing on their own goals, by doing that, continual support systems can activate these potential helpers who are generally willing, able, and available to help, but face challenges in being able to balance both of those outcomes. And so overall, our findings demonstrated that continual support systems that are capable of monitoring personal goals and individuals' needs, matching these potential helpers to opportune moments to support needs and attend to their own goals, and priming these helpers to prepare them to provide support on demand between their own goals, can actually activate these potential helpers who really desire to balance both their own goals with supporting community needs, but just face challenges in doing so. These initial findings suggest that a continual support framework has the potential to enable these more supportive communities in really sustainable ways, because they're designed to overcome the challenges of meeting emerging needs with available resources in a community. And the recent continual support systems in the framework are able to support these dynamic and on-demand needs with existing community resources is because fundamentally they're integrating how prior CSCW and crowd computing research have approached these types of systems for supporting needs in the past. The continual support framework is designed to integrate both approaches by monitoring and coordinating the ways in which we can meet needs on demand in ways that are actually cognizant of and directly support the individual goals of potential helpers. With this hybrid way of thinking, we can imagine future crowdsourcing systems that are designed to look beyond just aligning tasks with an individual's goals and explicitly integrating helpers' goals into models, as is often the case in communities research. Similarly, future community system design can better integrate ways to track goals and optimally coordinate real-time help across a community in more scalable ways, as you often see in crowd research systems. The future design of continual support systems can also extend to think about how to coordinate support as needs and goals scale. So in settings where the needs and goals of individuals scale, we may need to extend continual support systems to coordinate support in ways that best satisfy both community and individual helper outcomes. Future continual support systems can integrate different coordination algorithms that consider various ways to best satisfy the many needs in a community given the existing support resources available. And further, such systems might even surface trade-offs or different approaches and potential consequences for individuals and the broader community, allowing people to evaluate what they may want both as individuals and as a community at large. Future work can also study the application of these types of systems, continual support systems, in more diverse community settings. So we talked about we focused our pilot evaluation on the setting of an ad hoc crowd of spectators, but the challenges that the ad hoc crowd face can persist across many different community settings, where individuals are generally willing, available, and able to support others' needs, but they just struggle to balance this with their own goals when the needs and the status of their own goals are changing continuously. Moving forward, we may want to explore the application of a continual support framework in other settings like workplace and learning environments as a way to create feasible support opportunities for individuals to meet more needs within their communities. And finally, future continual support systems can take more mixed initiative approaches to handle diverse and complex sets of needs. They may need to incorporate mixed initiative approaches to handle these diverse and complex sets of needs and goals that occur in these other community settings that we talked about, like the workplace and learning environments, but are really actually challenging to model and monitor automatically. In such settings, where we may not be able to automatically and exhaustively monitor and model the needs and goals, it can be really important that future continual support systems extend to enable more mixed initiative approaches that supplement the automated models with human input when these automated models may fail. Thank you.